from PRX.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and friends beyond the binary, it's time for the podcaster looking at a card. What is that? An index card upside down that says, you know, upside down. What does it mean? I don't know, but you know what I'm here for is to turn your frown upside down, or at least make it into a neutral line, and ideally convert that into a drooling, whatever you call it, mouth. I guess what do you call it? Get your drool on. And you know why it's time to get your drool on? Because it's time for Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. Hey, everybody, this is Scoots running through why people support the show. And maybe you're maybe you're similar to this person, right? So put yourself in their shoes, because maybe you're the person I'm counting on tonight. The show's counting on. And you're saying, yeah, I think Scooter has been trying to get through to me. I've been putting off supporting the show for a few years, but maybe I am the one. Because I remember what my bedtime was like, what the deep, dark night was like before Sleep With Me. I'll never forget what my bedtime was like before this show. And I don't want to go back there. It's finally sunk in that this show needs people like me to support the show back to exist. If I don't support the show or someone else doesn't support it for me, the podcast will be gone. So I'm going to go right now to sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus and sign up and support the show. So I don't have to worry about that. And as soon as they do, I'll set up the bonus content later, but I'll support the show right now in this moment. sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. And then they feel this relief. Now I don't got to worry about it. Now I got access to all this great bonus content, ad-free episodes, story-only episodes. But my $60, my $120, my $7 a month has changed the entire future of the podcast for me and everybody else. Wow, that's relieving. So thank you to all the people that do that. And thank you for considering it tonight. Oh, Mystery Bard, a lot of people help out on the show. Who are they?
Posty poster son sounds like an earful. Wrote the theme song. Edits episodes too. Carl W. the legend. Also edits episodes. Ashley, Kenny, Scotty, Jennifer. Runner. Eric and the team at Astound or on the website. I am the Mystery Bard. I do the lullabies, yeah. I do commissions at jonathanmann.net. I'll write a song for you. Any reason at all. You can tell me the story and I'll make it personal. You see the kindness shine straight on through when the listeners form their own Facebook group. Keith, Stacy, Sarah, Julie, and Jennifer. These are your moderators. Get support dear Scooter on Patreon. Buy the merch and support the sponsors. You can find anything you want at sleepwithmepodcast.com. And we're so proud that we could dance. Rusty Biscuit, Lois, Hannah like banana. Leah does the transcripts.
Thanks, Mystery Bard. If you some of these messages rang true for you, but you're not in a position to financially support the show, let people know about the podcast. Give them your honest experience with the show, how you discovered it, how you like to listen, and how it helps. Spread the word, and let me know about it so I can say thanks. Send me a message through our website or on social media. That's a huge, huge way to help the show. You could still be a part of this thing and helping us keep it going just by letting somebody else know about the podcast. Thanks, and what do you say we get on with the show? Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep? Well, welcome. This is Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do it with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place. I'm going to pat it. I'm going to smooth it. I'm going to rub it down. I'm going to buff it. I might even tweak it, massage it, and I'll tap it, and I'll establish it, and I'll put my arms around it when needed. A safe place where you can set aside whatever's keeping you awake, whether it's thoughts, feelings, physical sensations, travel, changes in routine or work schedule. Maybe it's something temporary. Maybe it's something ongoing. But I'm here to try to help Now, this podcast's a little bit different. It's tough to make sense of it. So it's best if you're new to just kind of kick back and you'll wonder what's going on, and that'll be okay. And you'll say, this doesn't make any sense, and that'll be okay. And you wonder, should I keep an open mind about this or should I be skeptical about it? And I say, you could do both if you wish. Test this out a few times, see if it helps you. The podcast has not been known to work immediately, though it does on some people, but give it a few tries. What I'm going to do to create that safe place, one, try to earn your trust with giving you permission to do whatever, you could listen in whatever way you wish. I'm going to send my voice across the deep, dark night. I'm going to use lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders. Normally I wear meander wear, but yesterday we'll talk about sweatpants, or I guess they're called, what are they called? It's called active wear sometimes. I think there's other terms where they say, let's class that up. Today for this intro, I'm wearing sweatpants with meanders built in one day that I plan on building in. Here's another thing. It has nothing to do with anything I've talked about, but just popped in my head. You know what Spider-Man doesn't get any credit for as a superhero is his ability to make his own costume. How come superheroes don't get credit for that? I just thought of that, but I was picturing him at a sewing machine. And for someone that didn't take a sewing class or have a sewing mentor, I mean, maybe he did. But they don't show any of that. They do show him sewing sometimes, and all the other superheroes, wherever whatever universe you're heroining in. If you made your own costume, great job. Because I guess I saw a movie where who's that other dude, Iron Man. Now he's like more of an industrial costume maker or whatever. He has the whole the complex behind him. He had a couple of things to say about the uniform, and I said, what the heck? This kid made it himself, bro. I guess that would be a role. Anyway, I kind of do try to interject that on your behalf. So I don't know if we'll get to sweatpants. Let me get to the new listeners before I get to these metaphors that don't really make any sense. That was a pointless meander, though. I guess it was a little bit pointed because it wasn't pointed. It was more fabric related. You say, hey, can we get some credit over here? And that's what I'm trying to do is give you credit for being a human. It's not easy. And I really believe you deserve a good night's sleep, and I'm here to help. If you're new, here's the structure of the show. It starts off with business. That's how we keep the archives free and the current episodes going, is the people that support the show directly or the people that support the sponsors. When your hand hits the fridge tomorrow, just remember to go to sleepwithme.podcast.com. You'll see all the sponsors there. So thank you for going through that. Then there's an intro, which is about 12 minutes, 14 minutes, 16 minutes, 10 minutes of me trying to explain what the podcast is. Verbally patting, smoothing, and buffing the safe place, introducing you or reacquainting you with the safe place every night if needed, because I really want you to feel safe and comfortable. I'm here to turn those frowns upside down or into a neutral state. And it's a whole purpose of bedtime. I say, well, if I can't give you credit for making a superheroine uniform, I could give you credit for saying, you know what, your existence is heroic. It's not easy, and I like I said, I like to help. I think I kind of repeated that because of its importance. And the intro kind of repeats that over and over in different ways. That's it. You say, okay, this is familiar, but it's different every time. I can use this as part of my wind down, as part of my bedtime routine, as a part of getting ready or brushing my teeth or calling in my pets or my pet or just snuggling in, maybe holding, I don't know if you have a wubby. Is that a universal thing, the word wubby? Or was someone famous have a wubby, or am I just remembering? I don't think any of my siblings had something called a wubby, but I know someone in my life did. So So I don't know if somebody call Carl Jung in the afterlife and ask about archetypes of, I mean, come on, like, who's the next Carl Jung? Am I pronouncing it correctly? Because I would like to get in touch with them and say, hey, is there an archetype? Is there a Wubby archetype? And they'd say, this did happen, actually. I called one of the centers or foundations on the expansion of I said, excuse me, do you know about a Wubby archetype? And they said, a Wookiee? And they said, no, Wubby archetype. And, of course they disconnect, but, sorry, I'm in the middle of also a podcast intro. Sorry, Carl, go back to whatever you're doing up there. Maybe you've picked up sewing. Maybe you have a sewing mentor. How about that? That would be pretty sweet. It wouldn't be, I guess this isn't reincarnation, but what if Carl J or whatever's up there and the rest of the team of brilliant minds about minds are up there sewing wubbies, archetypal wubbies. Okay, so the structure show, there's an intro. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, clearly. Then there's a story, bedtime story. This will be our second episode in our ongoing episodic with a touch of serial story, Nuns in Space, the Stand Chronicles. But if it's your first time listening, I'll fill you in on everything you need to know about that. Then we'll have some thank yous at the end. Between the intro and the story is some sponsor stuff, too, to keep the show going. So that's it structurally. Then what else do you need to know? You don't need to listen to me. Probably figure that out on your own. I mean, you don't got to be, what do they call that? A super tailor to figure out, Scoots is, okay, I can see these on the pointless meanders. So you don't need to listen. The podcast is just ideally engaging enough to take your mind off of whatever's keeping you awake. I mean, I guess I'm distracted again because I said if you are a superhero, maybe working on your own uniform is a way, like you say, okay, well, I got to get my mind off this stuff. The whole world, it's a big job. But when I sit down and I mend my uniform, I really feel free. I feel at ease. I feel recharged. Okay, here's a pitch. If I don't know whichever company wants to work with me on this, super tailor. Go ahead. Send me. You can send your checks directly to me. I think it's a thing. I guess you could say there's a lot of characters that fill in that role. Maybe that's the archetypal role. I don't know. I mean, I got a team of the greatest former Earth minds working on wubbies out there. If they listen to this podcast, so I call all those, like I said, I call every institute in Northern Europe. I've been blocked by them, but, okay, back to this. So you don't need to listen to me. I guess that's what I was explaining, but there's also no pressure to fall asleep. I'll be here for about an hour. I'll be here to keep you company. To be your companion in the deep, dark night, to be your bore friend, to help you fall asleep, to give you something else to think about, to turn that frown, to take the rigmarole out of bedtime, and to give you the ease that old Peter Parker might feel when he's behind that sewing machine. Maybe he has some thread between his lips, his shoulders. You could see his shoulders are so much more at ease. And he's just sinking there. Supposed to be a good cover, like Aunt May or whoever, Owen or whoever, Aunt Veru. They might come in and say, he said, well, this is my hobby. It's for the 4th. It'd be easy. You could say it's for the 4th of July parade, 6 months from now. Working on something for that, really, or, world, not this World Cup, but another World Cup maybe, or Canada, anything. What was I going to say? No pressure to fall asleep. I'll be here to keep you, because if you can't sleep, I'm going to be here giving it my all to the very end. I'm your bore bae. I'm your bore friend. I'm your bore cuz. So I'll be here, whether you're awake or asleep, because that's my job. And, I was going to talk about sweatpants. I'll do that in another intro because I feel like it needs to give them more space. But, the whole idea of the podcast, I guess this metaphor is so nonsensical, but the perfect fit. It's like, I'm sure great comic minds have done this with superheroes' hobbies. Could we get that as like a subprint or whatever? They say, we could do that with the rest of your comic scoots, the ones that they're unprint, they're non-printed. They say, okay, well, I'd prefer something other than the imaginary press I already created, gingerbread press. But we could call it super hobbies. Maybe it could be more, maybe we could get some funding, and do it as, I don't know, is there is there a budget for that? And they say, well, we're trying to get hobbies back for everybody. The Public Center for Hobby Enthusiasm. Instead of, how come nobody's a hobby enthusiast? I guess if you're a hobbyist, you're kind of an enthusiast. But I could be the next hobby enthusiast, and I'd say, well, I'm enthusiastic about people having hobbies, so what can I say? Kind of even a theme in this episode a little bit tonight, where I say, hey, even superheroes, even post-Earth life minds, people in charge of mind stuff, they have hobbies, according to my records. And they said, really, what are they doing? Are they like figuring out stuff with, they're working on wubbies. First they're going to do an archetypal wubby. They're going to send it to me to look over. And they say, no, wrong color. Sorry, Carl. I don't know. You must have the whole Roy G. Biv spectrum and more up there. But, this is pea green. No one wants a pea. Some people do want a pea green wubby. That's a niche market, though. And I could see it. Don't worry. I'm just here. I'm not criticizing I guess I'm just saying it doesn't work. Back to the drawing board. I see what you're trying to do. An archetypal wubby has to be archetypal. Why don't you go back to when the earth was just covered in water? Take a look at that color. Whatever that's called. That's not miasma. I always get my miasma and my, whatever, and I don't know my miasma from my vestigial. Okay, Carl's rolling his, you know what I mean, though. That's soup, primordial soup. Think about the color of primordial soup. Make an archetypal wubby out of that and show it to me, and then I'll make a call. Okay, sorry, I'm back. I don't know what happened. I think I crossed over. I also made someone that's crossed over cross, but I'm here to help. I'm here to take your mind off stuff. I would posit, maybe you weren't thinking about all the other stuff when I was talking there, but I'm here to take your mind off stuff, to keep you company. Give it a few tries. See if it works. I hope it does, because I work very hard. I strive and I yearn to help you fall asleep. Thanks for coming by. And if you could just pay attention for a few minutes and how I talk about a few ways we keep the show going. Hey, everybody, this is Scoots running through why people support the show. And maybe you're maybe you're similar to this person, right? So put yourself in their shoes, because maybe you're the person I'm counting on tonight. The show's counting on. And you're saying, yeah, I think Scooter has been trying to get through to me. I've been putting off supporting the show for a few years, but maybe I am the one, because I remember what my bedtime was like, what the deep dark night was like before Sleep With Me. I'll never forget what my bedtime was like before this show, and I don't want to go back there. It's finally sunk in that this show needs people like me to support the show back to exist. If I don't support the show, or someone else doesn't support it for me, the podcast will be gone. So I'm going to go right now to sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus and sign up and support the show, so I don't have to worry about that. And as soon as they do, I'll set up the bonus content later, but I'll support the show right now in this moment. Sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. And then they feel this relief. Now I don't got to worry about it. Now I got access to all this great bonus content, ad-free episodes, story-only episodes. But my $60, my $120, my $7 a month has changed the entire future of the podcast for me and everybody else. Wow, that's relieving. So thank you to all the people that do that. And thank you for considering it tonight. Welcome to our ongoing episodically modular serial with a sprinkle of serial story, the Stan Chronicles, Nuns in Space. And if you've never listened before or you're big on continuity, I'll get you caught up right now so you can just get even more comfortable in that bed of yours there or wherever you may be sleeping. So snuggle in as I tell you about the Stan Chronicles, Season 2 of Nuns in Space. And as I said, I'll get you caught right up. It follows, it takes place in space, in a particular part of space, not that far out of Earth's atmosphere. I don't have any, I don't have the exact details on, if it's within any of Earth's gravity or not. So I can't definitively say that, but just outside of Earth's atmosphere, in a near future situation or totally fictional, depending on how you flavor your viewpoint of the world, is a clouded delusion separating Earth and space. And let me just get you caught up on the brief history. One time Earth was just like it is now. Maybe people smiled more on this Earth, maybe. Scooter didn't, but other people, it was rumored people did. And one day, everybody's just doing their Earth stuff, earthing around, when outer space and Earth, life beyond Earth, it suddenly changed, where it said, wait, is there life out there or not? What's up? We hear these bleeps and these blurps and, check the ice, say, what is that in the ice? Put it on BuzzFeed. What is that marking? But then one day, and it happened pretty fast, they said, hey, you know what? Earth's on our map now. Nice to meet you. This is my, we got space stuff. We got a diversity of ways of existing and traveling, visiting Earth. Also that comes with a bunch of tourism and commerce, just like you'd expect. And very quickly, life on Earth changed, but in a subtle and adaptable way. It also said, there's a conundrum. You say, I used to believe in one thing, and now I've seen this suddenly. Maybe it takes a decade or two to say, wait a second, I didn't think about this. And, Earth was just plugging along, dealing with outer space, and outer space was saying, hey, Earth, these people smile blankety blank percentage of the time. But I'm not sure exactly why, but then suddenly a cloud of delusion appeared surrounding the Earth and separating it from space once again. And when I say cloud of delusion, it's kind of like a cloudy day when it's not raining, those cloudy days, but this is in space, but you can't, just like you can't see the sky. You say, well, I know there's I've been on a plane before, or I heard about it, and I know there's blue sky on the other side of those clouds, but I can't see them. A cloud of delusion kind of looks like that, except with space stuff. You say, well, I used to be able to get in a spaceship and travel outside to another planet or something. Now, so I guess it's different than a cloudy day. Well, maybe if you had a plane with no instruments, but the cloud of delusion prevents you from going through the cloud of delusion because you get lost in delusion. This may be a record for explaining, but I want to catch up. Now, eventually they said, well, we got all this space commerce stuff we got to get to. How are we going to get through this cloud of delusion? Eventually they found if they paid a few people enough money and did enough that a very small percentage of the Earth population could navigate the cloud of delusion, much like a harbor pilot taking a ship from point A to point B. And Scooter, I guess, happened to be one of those people with his co-pilot, Stan, formerly a freestyle soda machine, now, a co-pilot robot. maybe a droid. I don't refer to Stan as droid. I refer to him as my best friend. And Scooter and Stan had a little business going where they would escort ships from point A to point B. Now, it's not easy navigating Cloud of Delusion. And then one day, everything changed, and Scooter and Stan went off on a bunch of adventures with the nuns from Scooter's childhood. That was season 1. Yeah, but as a lot of seasonal things do, and especially when you say, well, let's take this idea and make it more episodic and modular so people can listen to it in any order. Scooter, Drew, and the nuns in space returned to the Cloud of Delusion, and they kind of got caught in there. Yeah, I don't know if the cloud was denser or what, but when the season opened, and currently they're stuck in the Cloud of Delusion, in their ship, and you can't, this is the kind of thing where you say, let's figure this out. You can't just be flying around willy-nilly. So they're trying to figure out how to get out of outer space, or to outer space, or inner Earth atmosphere. And the nuns, the crew, they're sleeping. Just Scooter and Stan are awake. And Scooter's plan for this season, the reason it's called the Stan Chronicles, is like, well, I got this supercomputer, also a freestyle soda machine, bonus, by the way. Right now, ideally in sparkling water mode only, but is to use Stan and to try to get Stan to evolve to the next level as an artist. They're particularly using the book The Artist Way this season. I think in the hopes that Stan will evolve and they'll be able to work together on a higher level to get out of the Cloud of Delusion. And with plans like those, why would you wonder that they got caught in a Cloud of Delusion? Am I right? And so that's where we start off is Stan and Scooter on a ship in space in a Cloud of Delusion, working on Stan's artistic ability. And also Scooter in his studio buying time for a Hollywood celebrity playing Pablo Picasso. Very successful. No, I'm serious. Congratulations. Who voluntarily drives from L.A. once a week, well, now every 10 days or so, to introduce the episode, Mr. Antonio Banderas. Thank you. The ladies, the gentlemen, the boys, the girls, the friends beyond the binary. Make sure to check out my show, but I'd love it if you would. I work so hard on my craft. And speaking of craft, it's time for Nuns in a Space. Antonio, that was brilliant. And actually, believe it or not, I'm so proud. I'm so happy for you. Season 2, right? My friend, have you seen season 2, right? I'm so proud of you. What do you think of my performance? Okay, yeah, you know what? I was going to buy you dinner. Could we do as a congratulations? But could we talk about other stuff? I'm really working on my rapport building. You know, my friend, have you watched my show? Here's an idea, Antonio, that I was thinking of. This is like an artistic thing. I was thinking I would pretend I haven't seen it, and I would we would eat dinner together and watch episodes, and you could talk about it to me, or we could just watch it together, and I could, be physically in your presence and see how you physically, oh, my friend, I love that idea. Okay, could you set up the episode again? Because now we're Nuns in Space. All right, great. Nuns in Space, everybody. Hey, pen pal, it's me. I guess you haven't been hitting record. I've been in this Cloud of Delusion here. But I wanted to send you a message, and I guess I forgot I had to think through you. I've been talking to Stan, believe it or not, about that first to think. And I said, man, sometimes when I talk to Stan, I wish I was talking to myself, because the whole thing, should I call her Julie or Dr. Cameron? Well, she says, avoid the first think. And that's something that I learned in other rooms as well. And I said, how do you get a supercomputer freestyle soda machine to avoid the first think? Again, it's working with Stan with pausing before processing. But there is another element, pen pal, that I'm not totally comfortable like with myself or with Stan. It's like, Stan always says, well, there's nothing, if I'm not processing, then nothing's happening. And explaining to Stan, well, I have the same problem, Stan. I don't know, what this belief or trust or faith or hope, whatever we want to call it. He said, well, what a strange thing for me to have to find hope and faith in a solid state processors. Also, Stan has some vacuum tubes in there, some of which I added in just because I said they were on sale and they look so cool that sometimes I can open up this one back panel of Stan and then I say vacuum tubes. And even sometimes Stan acts goofy and I say, well, let me change out your vacuum tubes. Maybe that's what's wrong. But they do work. But so I say, well, you got to trust that if you don't do the first to think, that during that pause, something may be happening we're not aware of, Stan. And then Stan, sometimes he prints out, he says, well, there is nothing. Look at my activity. I said, well, do you have an inactivity monitor? He says, well, my activity monitor monitors for inactivity. And then I said, okay, let's change tactics. And I dug into day 2, which kind of for us is like week 2 or month 2. And I said, it's time to make a life pie, Stan. Well, time for us to bake a life pie. And we went through all that, and we've kind of been, imagining. But I said, what would a sentient, superpowered supercomputer machine have as a hobby? Because a lot of times Stan's hobby is saying, Scooter, are you sure I said, is that a hobby saying, are you sure you read it correctly, Scooter? And I said, yes, Stan, I can reread it. And they say, oh, actually, you're right. You're like, so Stan's hobby isn't so much correcting me, but observing me. And then I said, okay, Stan, we got to find you an actual hobby as we try to build out the life pie. And I said, okay, in a cloud of delusion, what can we have Stan do? And of course, Stan, and I said, he said, more soda art? I said, no. I said, I have a feeling we don't want to over-focus on your soda art, Stan, because that got us out of that particular predicament. I said, you're more than just, you may be a soda machine artist, or you may be a machine that's a soda artist. But I said, I think there's some quote I don't remember saying, like in vitae and arte, amor fati. I think I heard that one. And I said, for that, you need a hobby. I said, plus it gives you another non-first thinking. I'm like, you're not doing your job. You're not doing your art. You're doing an alternative activity. And so I said, okay, what are we going to do? Where are we going to put Stan? And I thought about the observation room. Because we talked about driftwood art and found art and making art. I said, is it art you find or it's objects you find and making art? And Stan and I went back and forth on that one. And I said, here's a couple of things, Stan. You could look through these because the one great thing about this ship is it has real telescopes, these non-digital, these actual ones with optics. And so I got Stan set up there. I said, keep an eye out for, I said, here's the things you could, I said, we'll hook you up to the exterior monitors. I said, space has sounds. I said, there may be objects floating in space. There's the stars and the voids and all that stuff. I said, maybe with like monitoring this stuff, we'll find your hobby. And you could found art found, artist found, the artist finding the found to make it into the arts. And then Stan said, I thought I was a soda artist. And I said, okay. Because I said, well, really, this is just a plan to get us out of this cloud of delusion, Stan, and have you live a fuller life. both of us outside of the cloud of delusion being stuck on this ship because, and Stan said, okay. I said, trust me, Stan. I said, it'll be nice for you to just spend some time monitoring space. They said, sometimes you go into inactivity mode. And he said, sleep? I said, no. He said, monitor space without monitoring it. And then he said something about, then he started talking about Nietzsche. And I said, I don't think I said, Stan, I need some vacuum tubes to try to understand any of that. And I'm short, my vacuum tubes got blown out. And he finally agreed. And then Stan said he started hearing things in space. And so he was excited and seeing things. And he said, yeah, there's stuff in this cloud floating around every once in a while. And he said, that was cogs and wheels and sprockets. And I said, just like the Jetsons. I said, are they in competition? Stan said, no, they're just floating around. But there's also noises floating around. But then Stan said, I've been hearing this one noise. And he goes, I've been listening to it. And I said, great, Stan. Sounds like a real rewarding hobby. And I found that I actually got very relaxed. If you've never watched a cog or a sprocket in space, I mean, it can be hard to track. But and then Stan said, well, that doesn't really, because I said, is there an infinite number of ways this could float in space, Stan? And he said, Scooter, I'm more interested in the noise coming in. And I said, what color he said, is that an iridescent maroon? Or is it just shiny? And then I Stan said, and I said, oh, okay. So he said, no talking, Scooter. Come on. I'm trying to monitor the noise in space, and it shuts it whenever you're here. He goes, I can't pick up on it. I said, okay, I'll leave you with your hobby as your life pie is baked. And I also said, Stan, I'm very proud of you. Thank you for doing this hard work. I said, you're really, and then Scooter asked, he said, Scooter, I don't know if I can do it. Scooter, what about your life pie? And I said, I got to get it to an oven outside of this cloud of delusion to bake it, Stan. I said, my hobbies currently are, I got pacing. I got pacing to do, so I'll do that. You do the monitoring. And Stan said, what about drinking too much water? I said, yeah, I got that down too, Stan, and then using the restroom a lot. So those are my hobbies. That doesn't make for the most appetizing life pie. Anyway, Stan, back to your hobby. Oh, boy, am I excited for you. I think I may have even quoted one of those books, like, oh, the places you'll go or something. Then what happened, Pen Pal, was that I went down, because I started thinking, I said, well, maybe this isn't, I said, what if Stan becomes like Stun or something, like at least Stan alone? So I said, let's pace down there and check on Stan on a semi-regular basis. Not as often as I use the restroom when I'm drinking a lot of water, but close. And Stan was listening very intently, and he even had his screen set up so it looked like that. And I said, Stan, how's it going? And he said, it's communicating to me in a binary language. And I said, wow. I didn't want to ask for explanation because part of me was like, let me listen to it. And then Stan played me something and it just sounded, and I said, because I listen to a lot of pink noise, you're used to. Before, that's all I hear now. So I said, well, it's like normal noise now. But, Stan was playing, and it was some bleeps and bloops. But I said, play me regular space, and it has bleeps and bloops. And Stan was saying, and I said, okay, Stan, are you sure you're not imagining these noises? Because I said, I wondered if it was Stan, I would have to hedge it around, like, tell a story about myself so Stan figures it out. At first, Stan said, so weren't your friends imaginary? And I said, okay. But then Stan said, I've considered that a possibility. And I said, Stan, you don't realize this is a breakthrough. I said, also I said, I'm pretty sure communication within the cloud is impossible. Because Stan, we were like playing with some graphs or something, and Stan said, this is coming within the cloud. And then we talked about it, and I said, if you're imagining this noise, Stan, where the life pie is already made, this is already a huge breakthrough. And I wasn't even I was trying to comfort Stan, but it was the truth. Like, if Stan was imagining things, particularly noises, and then the imagination was at a level where he was also giving it meaning. It was, I could hire somebody to write a paper about that, pen pal. It just like, I'm sure if someone gets these, messages and doesn't understand the context, and says, oh, the pen pal's imaginary, they might write any papers that, by the way, I have a legal right to compensation or my pen pal or estates do if you're monitoring these transmissions. But anyway, so I said, it's great, Stan. Either way, whether the noise is real or not, it's great. But then Stan said, well, that bothers me if you're saying, and I said, oh boy, another breakthrough. And I said, tell me more, Stan. And I really said, maybe I could be a computer, like a sentient, some sort of, that could be my job. And Stan said, I feel a connection to now that I'm communicating one way. I said, are you monitoring or communicating, Stan? How do you feel about that? Tell me more. And Stan said, I'm just monitoring, but I feel a connection. And he said, I haven't figured out what it is. It's just bleeps and bloops, but it has a meaning. I'm trying to figure out what language it is. But also, pen pal, my GUT said, something's weird here. Maybe it's just a breakthrough. And I said, tell me more, Scoots. Is it the breakthroughs? Are you getting jealous of Stan? And Stan said, Scooter, I'd prefer to be baking my life pie alone right now. And I said, yeah, that's your right, Stan. Congratulations on these breakthroughs. Keep it up. Not long after that, pen pal, Stan called me back down. And I said, okay, well, I guess this could be a career for me if we ever get out of it. And I said, well, would I want to do this on a daily basis? How many beings like Stan are there? And I said, well, let's just focus on the task at hand, Scoots. Let's keep Stan evolving. And I got back down there, and Stan said, I figured it out, and even more. And and I said, okay, let's break it down. What did you figure out, Stan? And he said, the language, it's a salvage ship, and what I'm hearing, he goes, is a combination of it like sending a signal out because it's automated and no one bump into it. And also, it's checking a space with, much like a dolphin, kind of like Stan said, it's like echolocation, but different because it's in space. And I said, so it's a salvage ship looking for salvage. And Stan said, yeah, it's an automated salvage ship. And I've adjusted, our directional rockets. And Stan said, I'm going to see if I can pick it up on the observatory. And Stan said, but that's not all. And Stan said, I just feel like, there was something there. And Stan said, and then the ship started, he sent it some signals and it started talking back in English. And I said, wait a second, and I said, do you have any recordings of it? And Stan started playing it, and at first it sounded like there was a movie with these droids that would scoot around on the ground, and they would go, mana, mana, mana. Mana, mana, mana. That's kind of how they talked. And that's what this sounded like. But Stan kind of explained it to me. And it was like a rough conversation, like, man, hey, man, how you doing, man? Amazing, man. And Stan would say, hey, my name's Stan. My name is Stan. So kind of like mumbling, like a digitized mumble. I don't know. And they said, well, they said a salvage ship, and I said, what's the name of the salvage ship? And Stan said, they're called Cali Drogo. And I said, they like the B-O-R-G. And Stan said, no, it's a them, they, Cali Drogo. And Stan said, don't shorten it either. It's Cali Drogo. I said, okay, Stan. And then Stan said, look, there. And Stan was like, the only thing I could tell you is what you'll find out in a few seconds. I could hear it in Stan's voice. And Stan was monitoring the real telescopes and saying, there's Cali Drogo. And I said, okay, Stan. And then I had to go check some, some propulsion thing. And I said, okay, I'll be back. And it ended up taking way longer because I had to change out a filter. And I got back, and Stan was even more excited. And then even I could see clearly that this was a really, really big ship, even though it's kind of far off and getting closer. And it was like this big salvage vessel. And I said, I said to myself, I wish I would have thought of that. Like someone must have launched an automated salvage vessel into the cloud. And I said, I wonder how many companies did that. And it's just cruising around the cloud, picking up, because the cloud's so full. Pen pal, in case you don't listen to everything I say, the cloud's been around long enough that all these ships people still tried to fly through it, even though they said it was impossible. And all those ships were in the cloud somewhere, or people posited. Very hard to find something when you're not supposed to go in there. And I guess this business person or whatever said, well, let's just send a salvage ship up. Once the cloud gets cleared up, we'll have a ship full of raw material, or however they salvage it. So I'm a bit jealous that I didn't think of that idea. But so I went back down, and Stan was so we saw a ship. Stan was very excited, beyond excited. And I said, so what's going on with you and Cali Drogo? And Stan said, Scooter, I think we've had another breakthrough. And I said, at this point, I said, I don't want you to tell me more in my head. But I said, oh, yes, Stan, tell me more. And Stan started going on this tangent about how Cali Drogo really believes in Stan, and that Stan should be an entrepreneur and become a part of Cali Drogo's crew. Or maybe they could work as a team. And I said, well, I was speechless. If I could have been rendered speechless and stopped myself from first thinking and speaking, I would have. But I said, what in the horses are you talking about, Stan? And Stan said, Scooter, I think I've found the complete life pie with Cali Drogo. This is the biggest breakthrough I'll ever have. And I said, okay, let me get this straight, Stan. Are you proposing to leave me, your best friend, for a ship named Cali Drogo, a salvage ship? And he said, a ship that believes in me, Scooter. I said, like a ship, like a human that believes in your artistic potential. And then Stan went, this far wasn't the best. Stan said, well, there's so much talking around, pen pal, but I'll try to make it summarized for you. Stan said, well, Scooter, he listed some of my accomplishments in quotes, and that Stan was reading my morning pages where I talk about Stan a lot. Because sometimes, Stan does stuff that, even though Stan's, that's morning pages, they're private to like a journal. And Stan talked about, my history and my accomplishments together. Jokes I made about Stan in the past about when Stan fell in love. Like I said, one day you'll fall in love, Stan, with a waffle maker. And I said, well, those were jokes between friends. And I said, how do you feel about hair dryers, Stan? Would you date a hair dryer? But that was when Stan was like, we were joking. And I didn't realize. I guess this, like I said, don't worry, pen pal. I've been humbled by this once again. And Stan said, now the good thing is I've been through this so many times, pen pals. But Stan said, Cali Drogo really believes in me and my potential. And of all the success we could have. And I said, flying around a cloud of delusion, salvaging lost ships. And Stan said, for now, but Stan said, then Stan started about my timeline versus Stan's, and how Stan's is going to extend longer. And that him and Cali Drogo would have way more time together and downtime, and that they were already playing different games to pass the time. And again, Pen Pal, I know a lot of times they say this is my narcissistic personality or whatever, because Stan also said that Cali Drogo said that about me. It's, we should be called, like me, I should be called Captain Narcissist. But what was I going to say? I was talking about me, and then I forgot who else I was talking about, Pen Pal. Back to me anyway. But really, I think Stan, I can't remember now. I got too mixed up because I was picturing myself combing my hair. Stan, like, was basically like, Cali Drogo, who sees more of me, but sees my potential and my timelines. And, at some point, Stan said, you got to come to grips, Scooch. Maybe I could salvage this ship. And then I said, not over and Stan said, well, would be. And I said, great, Stan. That's wonderful thinking by you. And I said, so are you Stan? I said, Stan, let's just get to the chase eventually. Are you in love with Cali Drogo? Is that the breakthrough? And Stan says, Cali Drogo loves me, Scooter. And I said, okay. And you love Cali Drogo? And Stan said, yes. And I said, a ship. And then I said, holy parent zone. I said, you're in love with a ship you've never met. And Stan said, yes. And Cali Drogo's never met you. And they are in love with you. And I said, and Stan said, yes. And they said you would say. And I said, no, I'm not saying they couldn't be in love with you, Stan. I'm just saying that you two beings that have never met. And then Stan explained to me, communicating across space and their processing abilities. And again, my gut was tingling, Pen Pal. And I said, and then all of a sudden I had not paid attention and we got closer to Cali Drogo. And then now these things work on magnetism, of course, also tractor beams and stuff. But our ship started to do a little bit more than vibrates. And I said, Stan, what was that? And Stan said, I think we're caught in the magnetic pull of Cali Drogo. And I said, a holy metaphor, Stan. I said, dude, this is great, Stan. This is your first crush. And then I shouldn't have said that. Because then Stan explained to me, definitions that it was love and the checklist Stan had run for love. And again, something was still off to me. And I couldn't, I actually could physically sense, other than the magnetism, that something was off. I said, Stan, tell me more about, what is Cali Drogo? And then Stan said, well, that I should be more skeptical of your leadership, because it's not, and I said, okay, so now I'm not a leader. It's not, okay. So I'm not a good leader and I don't believe in you. Is that what the summary is? And Stan said, Scooter, don't take it so hard. Scooter, don't take it so hard. That's what Stan said. And I said, well, and then I tried to hold, I said, Stan, what am I going to do without you? You're going to go live on Cali Drogo forever. And Stan said, Scooter, it'll be fine. And I said, interesting. And then I said, Stan, what's going to happen? I said, how does Cali Drogo take on the ships? Does it start immediate salvage before onboarding? And Stan said, I don't know. And then I sensed something, I sensed a gulping, Pen Pal. And then Stan said, was trying to communicate with Cali Drogo. And Stan said, there's no answer. And I said, okay, whoa. What do you, I said, consult your databases about automated salvage ships of this size and look in the on-take. And Stan said, I believe that the Cali Drogo begins salvaging immediately before onboarding. And I said, so what is, I said, what does that mean for me and the rest of the crew and you? And Stan said, And Stan said, well, I'll be fine. Kelly Drogo must have a plan. And I said, okay. I said, can you run back? I said, here's the thing. Is Kelly Drogo still broadcasting that original message? Can you still pick up on that? And Stan said, hold on. I said, the bleep and the blurp in the echolocation. And Stan said, yeah. And I said, what is it saying? And Stan said, it's the same thing, except it's also aware that we're, like it's preparing to salvage us. And I said, right. And I said, was that bleep and blurping going on the whole time while you were communicating? And Stan said, yeah. And I said, could you play me back some of the communication? And Stan said, it was playing it back to me. And I said, it's really digitized, like it's coming through a PA system a little bit, Stan. He said, could you monitor the sleeping quarters and see if any of the nuns are, and I said, never mind. I know, I said, Stan said, Scooter, I don't understand. I said, keep monitoring, see if you could raise Kelly Drogo, like for, like ping Kelly Drogo for, like try to, and Stan said, okay, Scooter. I said, really, like you're really probing, like they hung up. I said, you might have had just your first breakup, Stan. And Stan said, what do you mean? And I said, well, Kelly Drogo's giving you the silent treatment. I mean, Stan, this is multi-layered. And I'm going to get to the bottom. So he said, Scooter, Kelly Drogo, I said, don't worry. And then I had to hug Stan. Then I had to hold Stan. And I said, it's going to be okay, Stan. And then I said, I've been through this a bunch of times. And Stan said, you mean love or crushes? And then Stan said, never mind, I know. And then he listed all the crushes. He went through my whole crush history. And Stan said, how come it's, you have a crush, you get crushed, Scooter? And I said, literally, Stan, that's what we're looking at here. It was Salvage City. And then Pen Pal, I rushed down to the sleeping quarters where, of course, Sister Marianne was wide awake, pretending she tried to get back in her thing and pretend she was asleep. And I said, nice try, Sister Marianne. But she didn't seem quite herself. Like I said, you tried to get Stan. I said, what was your plan there? And she said, take over the ship and get back control. And I said, it's weird that, I said, did you wake? She said, no, there's something going on. We're getting woken up every once in a while. And she said, also, I think I may be in love with Stan. But also I want to take, she goes, I don't want you to be captain of our ship anymore. And I said, you realize that we're in TRUOBLE or something. And I said, you're going to have to apologize. I said, this was Stan's first love crush. I said, you got to go up there. And she said, probably not a good idea now. And I said, well, I'm on an honesty only. I said, normally, sister, what I would say is you get on the PA, to make up some story about how you had to divide into Cali and Drogo or something, and the digital salvage part of you when you're torn, and that Stan has to figure, maybe that Stan has to figure out a way, but the only way, to save all of us is for Kelly Drogo to be, deleted. And the only way to delete Kelly Drogo is to shut down the salvage to cease salvage operations temporarily, and just open onboarding, because we're being magnetically pulled into the ship anyway. And that's what you want for Stan. And I guess, but that would be, you would be doing that, sister, and preserving us so that you could, because soon the cloud of delusion's going to, she goes, I'm in love with Stan. And I said, yeah, but I said, the cloud of delusion's taken over, sister. I'll leave you with your PA, then get back in bed, and I'll put you back to sleep. And so then I went back up, and Stan said, where were you, Scooter? I said, something weird with the sleeping pods. I said, I just had a sense one of the sisters was awake. She was just waking up, though. And I put her back to sleep. And And Stan said, it's weird that Kelly Drogo's communicating through a PA. And I said, well, maybe that is using our hall as an antenna. And Scooter said, that's just like Kelly Drogo, so inventive. And then I started hearing Stan with Kelly Drogo here. And then the whole 9 yards that I had told sister. With all Stan's reactions, of course, like, no, you can delete you. And I said, yeah, it's the only way to pause. You have to hack into my system, though. And then, the whole thing, my love for you, Stan, is stronger. Why do you love me more than you just floating around salvaging things? And the sister thought of something that was brilliant. She said, there's we got all these ships. We need you, because there's a lot of the ships we took on. Actually, we gathered some of their crew. We messed up their ships, but at least we had a system for keeping the crew. And they're all trying to sleep too. But and Stan said, you love humans more. And Kelly Drogo said, I'll be downloaded in a backup server somewhere, Stan. So you have to get out of you have to work with Scooter to find your full potential and get out of the cloud of delusion. Keep the salvage for yourself, maybe, or for Scooter, or for the nuns. She didn't say that, but I know that's what she meant. But she said, help the crew on board of all these other ships that were salvaged. And then find out where I was downloaded and backed up. But to do that, you got to get out of the cloud. So you got to work with Scooter to fulfill your potential as an artist and evolve to the next level. And I said, holy cow, Sister Mary Ann and I are really tuned in. And Stan, he cried soda tears. And I did not drink Stan's soda tears because out of respect, I did wipe them because I said, this is going to get gunky with a wet rag. And I did pat Stan and hold Stan again. And then Stan hacked into Kelly Drogo's computers, which took a while as we got closer. Shut down the salvage operations that would normally mess your ship up permanently. And then we eventually, we still were in the magnetic pole. So that's it, pen pal. We're on Kelly Drogo now, or we're entering its giant hangar. And actually, believe it or not, I also talked to Stan. I said, Stan, why don't you, I said, what if Kelly Drogo is both I said, what if you don't know if Kelly Drogo is imaginary or real? And Stan said, what do you mean, Scooter? And I said, Stan, I think you're really feeling something. And I said, for me, it's here. And I touched my chest and my gut thing. And I said, sometimes you're still not sure. The connection's there. And you're not sure if it's connected to a memory or an idea or something concrete. And Stan said, well, if Kelly Drogo's dead. And I said, okay, Stan. He said, somewhere on a server somewhere in the universe. I said, but maybe you could record. I said, think about your morning pages, your internal Kelly Drogo, when you're writing your morning pages, when you're working on your art, there's a piece of Kelly Drogo living inside you. And this Stan said, well, Scooter, you record those imaginary messages for your pen pal. Maybe I could record them for Kelly Drogo. And I said, go ahead, Stan. So this is Stan's message, pen pal. It's pretty sweet. And I'll talk to you soon, pen pal. Good night. And then Stan's, hey, Kelly Drogo, this is Stan here. We landed inside your ship, which is hard to tell. And it's so exciting. We're in here now. And I'm going to keep the crew, and I'm going to help Scooter. I know he's Scooter's kind of a lost person, and you are helping me to help him. And it's good to meet you, even though I met you. and I'll tread lightly because Scooter rolls me around on a dolly anyway. But I miss you, even though I'm here with you, Kelly Drogo. It's your sweetie Stan, and I'm going to make sure everybody keeps your ship clean, and we get everybody out of here. Also, I'm not sure who owns you because I've been thinking about it, and I don't think it's your fault that you were salvaging, but I don't know who has actual rights to this salvage, but I'll figure that out, and then I'll find you, and someday I'll see you. Okay, I'm gonna do my non-processing time, and I say goodnight, Kelly Drogo. All right, buddy, this is Scoots with a tuck you in message about, I've been asking people when they sign up to support the show, why? Like, what is the biggest reason someone supports the show? So I don't know if you want to do this. You could put yourself in their shoes. I'm going to walk you through what some people have said, the kind of recurring themes. And maybe if you put yourself in their shoes, maybe you're the one tonight that'll support the show. So here's how it goes normally. This is the most popular kind of response. First they say, yeah, no, Scooter was talking to me. I am the one who can support the show and who wants to. I've just been putting it off or thinking someone else is going to do it or tuning it out. But yeah, I'm the one. And I remember what my life was like, what my bedtime was like before I found Sleep With Me. I remember that, and I didn't like it. And I don't want to go back to that. And I know, just like Scooter says, the show can't exist unless people like me support it. If I don't support it, or someone doesn't support it for me, the show won't be here. And I don't want that either. And then what they always do, and they tell me about this, the people that actually have been signed up lately, they go right now. So if this is you, go to sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus right now. And sign up, and then worry about the bonus content tomorrow. Because if you put it off, you will put it off for years. But as soon as you sign up, you could have that relief. You see, I'm a part of this now. I'm a part of what's keeping this show going. I'm a part of this bedtime relief for me. Now I don't got to worry about whether the show's going to be around or not. And for other people too. And that feels pretty nice. A lot better than what it used to be like. So thanks. Thanks for supporting the show. And when you sign up, you get a video from me saying just that. The second one kind of goes very similarly. And it does take hearing me ask 30, 40, 50 times that suddenly something clicks and it's like, man, this show, Scooters really needs some support here. I didn't realize it just clicks at some point. This podcast needs people to support it to exist. And I am so happy this is in the world. It changed my relationship with sleep like nothing else had. There's not something that could replace this. And if Scooter stopped narrating the show or making the show, I would really miss him. Even if it was somebody else or a different company making the podcast, I would miss this version of Sleep With Me if it was gone a lot. Because I like it. I love it. And it makes my life better. I really enjoy it. And I don't want to go without it. And I do know now it needs my support right now. And then right now, maybe you're the one. They go to sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. They sign up. They set up the bonus content a day or two from now when I send out the follow-up welcome video and stuff like that. But then they're like, wow, I get a video from Scoots when I sign up. Man, maybe now I feel closer to this show. I feel really good because I've done my part. I don't got to worry about it anymore. I was putting it off. I put it off for 3-4 years. That's a common refrain lately. And I'm glad it clicked, and I'm glad to be a part of this thing. So if that's you, I hope it is. You can support the show. You're in a position to, and you will right now because you'll miss it if it's gone. Don't wait. sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. And the next one kind of looks something like, okay, put yourself in this person's shoes. Maybe this is you. Maybe you only use the show when you need it, or maybe you use the show pretty often, but you're like, finally, I found something that makes my relationship with bedtime better. I tried all this other stuff. I paid for a lot of stuff, but Sleep With Me has made my nights better, and therefore my days are better. And I don't want to go back to what it was like before the show was a part of my life. So me paying $120, $240, $60 a year, like Scoots is serious. That's another thing they realize. My $60 a year will change the future of the podcast. My $60 a year is a really big deal to the show and to Scooter and to keeping it going. So I'm going to go right now and support the show at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. And they do that right now when it clicks. And then suddenly after they do it, they feel good. And then they feel even better when I send them a thank you video. Because then I say, hey, what made you sign up to support the show? Because it changed my life. Because it did this for me. It helped me in this way. Because I don't want to think about not having the podcast in my life, or the podcast has helped me through these major things in my life, and I want it to be around the next time something else comes up. If that's you, you can sign up at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. But don't put it off, because if you're like most people, you'll put it off for 2 or 3 years, and we could really use your support tonight. So think about it. Thanks.